Dr. Elena Rodriguez rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. The numbers didn't make sense. She had been working in the lab for 16 hours straight, trying to understand the strange signals that had been coming from deep space for the past 3 days. "Marcus, come look at this," she called to her friend who was working at the desk across the room. Dr. Marcus. Thompson put down his coffee and walked over to Elena's workstation. "What is it now?" Marcus asked. He was tired too. They had both been working non-stop since the signals started coming in. Elena pointed at the screen. "These aren't normal radio waves. They're something else, something I've never seen before." She pulled up another window on her computer. "Look at this pattern. It's too organized to be natural." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. The two scientists worked together at the Horizon's Edge Research Station, a large facility floating in space between Earth and Mars. Their job was to listen for signals from other planets and star systems. Most of the time, they only heard natural sounds from stars and planets. But these new signals were different. "Where are they coming from?" Marcus asked. "That's the weird part," Elena said. "They're coming from the Kepler 442 system. That's about 1,200 light-years away from us." She switched to another screen. "But here's what's really strange. These signals shouldn't be able to reach us. They're using a type of wave that we thought was impossible. The signals were coming through something called gravitational waves. These were ripples in space itself, created when very massive objects moved around. Scientists on Earth had only recently learned how to detect these waves. But the signals from Kepler 442 were using gravitational waves in a way that seemed to break the rules of physics." "Have you tried to decode them?" Marcus asked. Elena nodded. "I've been working on it all night. I think I'm starting to understand the pattern." She opened a new program on her computer. "It looks like someone is trying to send us a message." The two scientists worked together for the next several hours. Slowly, they began to understand what the signals were saying. The message was coming from an alien race that called themselves the Vecturi. They lived on a planet in the Kepler 442 system, orbiting around a star that was much like Earth's sun, but the Vecturi had a big problem. Their star was dying much faster than it should. According to their message, they had tried to use their star as a source of energy for their civilization, but something had gone wrong with their experiment. Now their star was going to explode in less than 6 months. "This can't be right," Marcus said, reading the decoded message on the screen. "They're saying they have 12 billion people on their planet." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. 12 billion lives. That was more people than lived on Earth, and they were all going to die when their star exploded. The message continued. The Vecturi had no way to escape their planet. They didn't have the technology to travel to other star systems. They had detected radio signals from Earth many years ago, and they knew that humans existed. Now they were asking for help. "We need to tell Captain Morrison about this," Elena said. She picked up the communication device and called the captain of the UES Endeavour, the most advanced spaceship that humans had ever built. Captain Jake Morrison was sleeping in his quarters when the call came in. He had been dreaming about his home on Earth, about the small town where he grew up. The sound of the communication device woke him up. "Captain Morrison here," he said, still half asleep. "Captain, this is Dr. Rodriguez at the research station. We have an emergency. We've received a message from an alien civilization and they need our help." Morrison sat up in his bed. He had been a space captain for 15 years and he had never heard anything like this. "Are you sure it's real?" "Yes, sir. We've been working on decoding it for hours. They're calling themselves the Vecturi and they're in serious trouble." Morrison got dressed quickly and made his way to the communication center of his ship. Within minutes, he was looking at the same decoded message that Elena and Marcus had been studying. The message was heartbreaking. The Vecturi described their civilization as peaceful and advanced. They had built beautiful cities, created amazing art, and made incredible scientific discoveries. But their attempt to use their star as an energy source had failed. Now their star was becoming unstable and it would explode soon. The Vecturi had tried everything they could think of. They had built spaceships, but these ships were too slow to reach other star systems. They could only carry a few million people to the other planets in their system, but those planets would also be destroyed. When their star exploded, "What do they want us to do?" Morrison asked. Elena's voice came through the communication system. "They know we have better technology than they do. They're asking if we can help them somehow." Morrison thought about this. Humans did have better technology than the Vectri. Earth scientists had developed ways to travel between star systems much faster than the speed of light. They had also learned how to manipulate the energy inside stars, though this technology was kept secret from most people, but the Kepler 442 system was very far away. Even with humanity's fastest ships, it would take months to get there. And the Vectri were saying they only had 6 months before their star exploded. "There's something else," Elena said. "The Vectri have mentioned a backup plan." Morrison leaned forward. "What kind of backup plan?" "If we can't save them, they want to make sure their civilization isn't forgotten. They've figured out a way to turn their exploding star into a message. They want to encode their entire history, their culture, their knowledge, everything about their civilization into the gravitational waves that will be created when their star explodes." Morrison felt a chill. The idea was incredible and terrifying at the same time. The Vectri were willing to die, but they wanted to make sure that other civilizations would remember them. The message would travel across the entire galaxy, Elena continued. Any civilization with the right technology would be able to receive it and learn about the Vectri. It would be the greatest message ever sent. Morrison closed his eyes and thought about the decision he would have to make. Humanity had the power to help the Vectri, but it would mean revealing their most advanced technology to an alien species. It would also mean risking human lives on a dangerous mission to a distant star system, but if they didn't help, 12 billion innocent people would die. And if the Vectri's backup plan worked, their exploding star would send a message across the galaxy that would last for millions of years. Morrison opened his eyes and looked at the decoded message again. At the bottom, the Vectri had written a simple plea. "We know you are out there. We know you are more advanced than us. Please help us. We don't want to die, but if we must, please help us make sure we are remembered." The captain realized that this was the most important decision that any human had ever had to make. The fate of 2 civilizations might depend on what happened next. "Dr. Rodriguez," Morrison said into the communication device, "send all the data to Earth immediately. We need to contact the government right away." As the message traveled toward Earth, Morrison stood in the communication center and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the Kepler 442 system, 12 billion people were waiting to see if humanity would help them survive, or at least help them be remembered forever. Admiral Patricia Hayes sat in her office on Earth, staring at the message from the Vectri. She had read it 5 times, but it still didn't seem real. 12 billion alien people were going to die unless humanity did something to help them. The message from Captain Morrison had reached Earth 3 hours ago. Since then, Patricia had been making urgent calls to leaders all over the solar system. The president, the heads of the Mars colonies, the space stations around Jupiter, everyone needed to know about this. "Ma'am, they're all ready for the meeting," said her assistant, Lieutenant Amy Clark. Patricia nodded and walked to the conference room. Inside, she could see the faces of important people from all over human space on the big video screens. President Catherine Brooks was there from Washington. Governor Bill Chun was calling in from Mars. Commander Lisa Park was speaking from the Europa Research Station. All of them looked worried. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia began, "we are facing the most important decision in human history. 3 hours ago, we received a message from an alien civilization. They are asking for our help." She played the decoded message from the Vectri. The room was silent as the leaders listened to the alien plea for help. When it finished, President Brooks was the first to speak. "How do we know this is real?" she asked. "This could be some kind of trick." Dr. Lisa Shun, humanity's top expert on stars and space, spoke up from her laboratory on the moon. I've been studying the data, Madame President. The signal is definitely real. And based on what they're telling us about their star, I believe their story is true. What exactly are they asking us to do? Asked Governor Chun from Mars. Dr. Lisa. Chun pulled up some charts on her computer. They want us to help them stop their star from exploding. According to their message, their star is becoming unstable because of an experiment they tried. They were trying to take energy directly from their star, but something went wrong. Can we do it? President Brooks asked. Dr. Chun was quiet for a moment. Yes, we can do it. The Aurora Project gave us the technology to control what happens inside stars. We could probably stabilize their star and save their planet. The Aurora Project was one of humanity's biggest secrets. For the past 10 years, human scientists had been learning how to manipulate the energy inside stars. They could make stars burn brighter or dimmer, and they could even prevent stars from exploding. The technology was so powerful that only a few people knew about it. But there's a problem, Dr. Chun continued. If we help them, we'll have to tell them about our most advanced technology. We'll have to reveal the Aurora Project to an alien species. Commander Ryan Sullivan, the head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. That's exactly what I'm worried about. If we save these aliens, we might be creating a future enemy. What if they use our technology against us later? But if we don't help them, 12 billion people will die, said Dr. Paul Davis, one of the engineers who had worked on the Aurora Project. How can we just let that happen? The argument went on for hours. Some leaders thought humanity should stay hidden and protect itself. Others believed that humans had a duty to help other intelligent life forms. The debate grew heated as time passed. There's another option, Dr. Davis finally said. What if we help them with their backup plan? Instead? Everyone looked at him. What do you mean? Asked President Brooks. According to their message, the Vecturi have figured out a way to turn their exploding star into a message. They want to encode their entire civilization into the gravitational waves that will be created when their star dies. The message would travel across the galaxy for millions of years. Dr. Davis stood up and walked to the front of the room. Instead of trying to save them, we could help them create the perfect message. We could use our technology to make sure their star explodes. In exactly the right way, every gravitational wave would carry information about their civilization. You're talking about helping them die, Commander Sullivan said. No, Dr. Davis replied. I'm talking about helping them become immortal. Their message would reach every corner of the galaxy. Any civilization with the right technology would be able to learn about the Vecturi. Their knowledge, their art, their stories, everything would survive forever. Admiral Hayes thought about this. It was a strange idea, but it might be the right choice. How would this work exactly? Dr. Chun answered. We would use our star manipulation technology to control how their star collapses. Instead of a random explosion, we would create a planned collapse that generates specific gravitational wave patterns. Each pattern would carry different information about their civilization. It would be like turning their star into a giant radio transmitter, added Dr. Davis. But instead of radio waves, it would use gravitational waves. The message would be much more powerful and would travel much farther. President Brooks looked around the room. What about trying to save some of them? Could we do both? Dr. Chun nodded. According to their message, they're already building evacuation ships. They can't save everyone, but they might be able to get a few million people to safety in other parts of their solar system. We could help them with that while also helping them create their message. The room was quiet as everyone thought about the options. Finally, President Brooks spoke again. How long would it take to reach their system? Our fastest ship could get there in about 4 months, answered Admiral Hayes. But according to their message, their star will explode in 6 months. We would have very little time to work. And we would have to reveal our most advanced technology, added Commander Sullivan. The Aurora Project would no longer be secret. Dr. Davis shook his head. Not necessarily. We could help them without explaining exactly how our technology works. We could say we're using advanced computers to calculate the exact way their star should collapse. The debate continued for another hour. Finally, President Brooks called for a vote. The leaders from Earth, Mars, the Moon, and the outer colonies all had to decide together. All in favor of helping the Vecturi save as many people as possible. And create their stellar message? President Brooks asked. One by one, the leaders voted. It was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would help the Vecturi. All right, President Brooks said. Admiral Hayes, you're in charge of this mission. Dr. Chun, you'll lead the scientific team. Commander Sullivan, you'll handle security. And Dr. Davis, you'll work on the technical details. Admiral Hayes felt the weight of the decision. What should we tell the Vecturi? President Brooks thought for a moment. Tell them that humanity has heard their message. Tell them we're coming to help. And tell them that we'll make sure their civilization is remembered forever. After the meeting ended, Admiral Hayes returned to her office. She immediately sent a message to Captain Morrison, telling him to prepare the UES Endeavour for the most important mission in human history. She also sent a message back to the Vecturi. The message was simple. We have received your call for help. Humanity is coming. We will help you save as many of your people as possible. And we will help you create a message that will echo across the galaxy for millions of years. You will not be forgotten. As she sent the message, Admiral Hayes looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vecturi were waiting to see if humanity would keep its promise. The fate of two civilizations now depended on what would happen in the next few months. The message would take years to reach the Vecturi. But Admiral Hayes knew that Captain Morrison and his crew were already preparing to travel to the Kepler 442 system. The real work was just beginning. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour and watched his crew prepare for the most dangerous mission they had ever attempted. The ship was moving through space faster than any human vessel had ever traveled before. They had been flying toward the Kepler 442 system for 3 months, and they still had 1 month left to go. Captain, we're receiving another message from the Vecturi, said Lieutenant Tom Wilson, the communications officer. Morrison walked over to the communications station. Put it on the main screen. The face of an alien appeared on the screen. The Vecturi looked somewhat like humans, but their skin was a light blue color and their eyes were larger. This was Zethkar, the lead scientist of the Vecturi civilization. Morrison had been talking with him for months through the quantum communication link that Dr. Rodriguez had established. Captain Morrison, Zethkar said, his voice coming through the translation system, I have bad news. Our star is becoming unstable faster than we expected. We now believe we have only 2 months before it explodes. Morrison felt his heart sink. They had been racing against time from the beginning, but now time was running out even faster. What about your evacuation ships? He asked. We have managed to build more ships than we originally planned, Zethkar replied. We think we can. Now save about 1 million of our people. But that still leaves 11 billion who will die with our world. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had joined the mission as the head of communications, stepped forward. Zethkar, we need to start working on the stellar message system right away. We can't wait until we arrive. Zethkar nodded. My team is ready. We have been preparing the data compression systems as you instructed. We have encoded our entire history, our science, our art, everything that makes us who we are. Chief Engineer. Amanda Foster had been working day and night to prepare the special equipment they would need. The stellar manipulation devices were the most advanced technology that humanity had ever created. They could control the very heart of a star, making it burn brighter or dimmer, or even making it collapse in a specific way. Amanda, how are the preparations going? Morrison asked. We're almost ready, Captain, Amanda replied. The stellar manipulation array is installed and tested. We'll be able to create the exact gravitational wave patterns that the Vecturi need for their message. Dr. Peter Johnson, a language expert who had joined the mission, had been working with the Vecturi to understand their culture. Captain, you need to see what they're trying to preserve. Their civilization is incredible. They have poetry that would make you cry, scientific discoveries that could advance human knowledge by centuries, and art that is beyond anything we've ever created. Morrison looked at the samples of Vecthory culture on Dr. Johnson's computer. Even through the translation system, he could see that these beings had created something beautiful and worth saving. "How much data are we talking about?" Morrison asked. "The complete cultural archive is massive," Dr. Johnson replied. "But Dr. Thompson has figured out how to compress it into gravitational wave patterns. When their star collapses, every pulse of energy will carry information about their civilization." Dr. Marcus Thompson had been working with both human and Vecthory scientists to solve the technical problems. "The key is to create a cascading collapse," he explained. "Instead of the star exploding all at once, we'll make it collapse in stages. Each stage will generate different gravitational wave frequencies, and each frequency will carry different types of information. It's like creating a song," added Dr. Rodriguez. "But instead of sound waves, we're using gravitational waves. And, instead of lasting a few minutes, this song will travel across the galaxy for millions of years." Morrison turned back to the screen where Zethkar was waiting. "We're going to do everything we can to help you. But I need you to understand something. Even if we succeed in creating your message, and even if we save 1,000,000 of your people, this is still going to be a tragedy." Zethkar's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. "Captain Morrison, my people have accepted what is going to happen. We are not afraid to die. But we are afraid of being forgotten. If you can help us create this message, if you can help us sing our song to the stars, then we will live forever." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. The human crew worked with Vecthory scientists to prepare the stellar manipulation equipment. Dr. Rodriguez maintained constant communication with the alien world. Coordinating the technical details, Dr. Johnson worked with Vecthory historians and artists to make sure that the most important parts of their culture would be included in the message. "Captain, we're detecting increased solar activity from their star," reported Lieutenant Sarah Davis, the science officer. "The star is definitely becoming more unstable." Morrison looked at the data on his screen. The Vecthory star was showing signs of the same instability that would eventually cause it to explode. Solar flares were erupting from its surface, and the energy output was fluctuating wildly. "How much time do we have?" Morrison asked. Dr. Thompson studied the readings. "Based on these patterns, I'd say we have maybe 6 weeks before the star goes supernova, possibly less." "And how long until we reach their system?" 3 weeks, Captain." Morrison realized that they would have very little time to set up the stellar manipulation equipment once they arrived. Everything would have to work perfectly the first time. "Zethkar," Morrison said into the communication system, "how is the evacuation going?" The alien scientist appeared on the screen again. He looked tired, and Morrison could see the stress in his large eyes. "We are loading the evacuation ships as quickly as we can. The first ships have already left for the outer planets in our system. They should be safe there when the star explodes." "What about the people who are staying behind?" Morrison asked. Zethkar was quiet for a moment. "They are helping us prepare the cultural archive. Everyone wants to contribute something to the message. Children are recording their favorite songs. Artists are creating final masterpieces. Scientists are sharing their latest discoveries. Even though they know they are going to die, they are working harder than ever to make sure our civilization will be remembered." Morrison felt a lump in his throat. The courage of the Vecthory people was incredible. They were facing death, but they were more concerned about preserving their legacy than saving themselves. "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez said, "we're receiving a massive data transmission from the Vecthory homeworld. They're sending us their final cultural package." Morrison watched as terabytes of data flowed into the ship's computers. Music, art, literature, scientific formulas, historical records, personal stories, everything that made the Vecthory civilization unique. "This is it," Dr. Johnson said, looking at the data stream. "This is the complete record of their civilization. Every important discovery, every beautiful song, every story that parents told their children, it's all here. Amanda Foster was making final adjustments to the stellar manipulation equipment. Captain, we'll need to position the ship very precisely. When we arrive, the gravitational field generators have to be placed at exactly the right distance from their star. How dangerous is this going to be? Morrison asked. Very dangerous, Amanda replied honestly. We'll be operating close to a star that's about to explode. If something goes wrong, we won't have time to escape. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They all knew the risks, but they were all committed to the mission. Any regrets? He asked. Lieutenant Wilson smiled. Captain, we're about to help create the greatest message in galactic history. I can't think of a better way to spend our time. Morrison nodded. Then let's make sure we do this right. The Vectri are counting on us, and we're not going to let them down. As the UES Endeavour continued its journey toward the Kepler 442 system, the crew worked around the clock to prepare for the most important mission in human history. Somewhere ahead of them, a star was preparing to die, and 12 billion people were waiting to see if their final message would reach the stars. The UES Endeavour dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge and stared at the sight before him. The Vectri star was clearly dying. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface, sending streams of burning gas millions of miles into space. The star's light flickered and changed colors in ways that no healthy star should. My God, whispered Dr. Rodriguez, standing beside him. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Lieutenant Wilson looked up from his station. Captain, we're receiving a signal from the Vectri homeworld. The main screen flickered to life, showing Zethkara's face. The alien scientist looked exhausted, but his eyes still held determination. Captain Morrison, welcome to our system. We are so glad you made it in time. How much time do we have? Morrison asked. Our scientists believe the star will explode. In 10 days, Zethkar replied, maybe less. The solar flares are getting stronger every hour. Dr. Thompson was studying the readings from the ship's sensors. Captain, the star's core is becoming very unstable. We need to begin the stellar manipulation process immediately. Morrison nodded. Amanda, how long will it take to set up the equipment? Chief Engineer Foster was already working at her station. We need to deploy the gravitational field generators around the star. That will take at least 6 hours. Then we need another 12 hours to calibrate the system. Do it? Morrison ordered. Start deployment immediately. As the crew worked to deploy the stellar manipulation equipment, Morrison watched the evacuation ships leaving the Vectri homeworld. The alien vessels were much smaller than human ships, but there were hundreds of them. Each one carried thousands of Vectri people to safety in the outer parts of their solar system. Captain, I'm getting a count on the evacuation, reported Lieutenant Davis. They've managed to save almost 2 million people. That's much more than they originally hoped. Morrison felt a mix of relief and sadness. 2 million lives saved was wonderful, but it meant that 10 billion Vectri would die with their world. Zethkar, Morrison said to the alien scientist, tell me about the people who are staying behind. Zethkar's expression grew sad but proud. They are the volunteers, Captain. Scientists, artists, historians, teachers. They stayed to help us complete the cultural archive and to make sure the stellar message system works properly. They chose to stay? Yes, they believe their work is more important than their lives. They want to make sure that our civilization's message reaches the stars perfectly. Morrison was amazed by the courage of the Vectri people. Even facing certain death, they were working to preserve their culture for future generations. Captain, the gravitational field generators are in position, Amanda reported. We're ready to begin the calibration process. Dr. Thompson was coordinating with the Vectri scientists on the planet below. Captain, they're sending us the final version of their cultural archive. It contains everything they want to preserve about their civilization. Morrison watched as the data streamed into the ship's computers. The archive contained millions of years of Vecthory history, their greatest scientific discoveries, their most beautiful art, and their most important stories. All of it would be encoded into the gravitational waves created by their dying star. How will this work exactly? Morrison asked. Dr. Thompson pulled up a diagram on the main screen. We're going to control how the star collapses. Instead of exploding randomly, it will collapse in a specific pattern. Each phase of the collapse will create different gravitational wave frequencies. Each frequency will carry different parts of their cultural archive. It's like creating a cosmic library, added Dr. Rodriguez. The star's death will become a message that travels across the galaxy at the speed of light. Any civilization with the right technology will be able to read it. The next few hours were tense as the crew worked to set up the stellar manipulation system. The Vecthory star continued to grow more unstable, with solar flares erupting every few minutes. Some of the flares were so powerful that they interfered with the ship's instruments. Captain, we're having trouble with the gravitational field generators, Amanda reported. The star's magnetic field is stronger than we expected. Morrison looked at the readings. Can we compensate for it? We're trying, but we might need to move the generators closer to the star. That would be very dangerous. Before Morrison could respond, Zethkar's voice came through the communication system. Captain Morrison, our monitoring stations are detecting a massive solar flare building up. It will be much larger than anything we've seen before. Dr. Thompson checked his instruments. Captain, if that flare erupts, it could damage our equipment. We need to move the ship to a safer distance. Morrison had to make a quick decision. How long until the flare erupts? Maybe 2 hours? Zethkar replied. And how long until we finish the calibration? At least 4 hours, Amanda said. Morrison realized they had a problem. If they moved away from the star, they couldn't finish setting up the stellar message system. But if they stayed, the solar flare might destroy their equipment. There's another option, Dr. Thompson said. We could use the ship's shields to protect the gravitational field generators. But that would mean staying very close to the star when it starts to collapse. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They all knew what he was thinking. If we stay close to the star, we might not be able to escape in time. Captain, Lieutenant Wilson said, the Vecthory people are giving their lives to create this message. I think we should be willing to risk ours to make sure it works. The other crew members nodded in agreement. Morrison felt proud of his people. All right. We stay close and protect the equipment, but I want escape plans ready just in case. The next few hours were the most dangerous of the mission. The massive solar flare erupted just as Dr. Thompson had predicted. The ship's shields glowed white-hot as they deflected the stream of charged particles from the star. The gravitational field generators were protected, but just barely. Calibration complete, Amanda finally announced. The stellar manipulation system is ready. Morrison opened a channel to the Vecthory homeworld. Zethkar, we're ready to begin the final phase. The alien scientist appeared on the screen one last time. Behind him, Morrison could see other Vecthory working frantically at their computers. Captain, we have finished uploading the complete cultural archive. Everything is ready. Are you sure about this? Morrison asked. Once we start the stellar collapse, there's no going back. Zethkar nodded. We are ready, Captain. Our people have lived good lives. We have loved, we have learned, we have created beautiful things. Now we want to make sure that others will know about us. Morrison felt tears in his eyes. The galaxy will remember you, Zethkar, I promise. Thank you, Captain Morrison. Thank you for helping us sing our song to the stars. Dr. Thompson activated the stellar manipulation system. The gravitational field generators began to create invisible forces that reached deep into the star's core. Slowly, carefully, they began to control how the star would collapse. First phase initiated, Dr. Thompson reported. The star's core is beginning to contract in the planned pattern. Morrison watched the readings on his screen. The star was beginning to die, but it was dying in exactly the way they had designed. The collapse would create gravitational waves that carried the Vectory's message across the galaxy. Second phase beginning, Dr. Thompson said. The gravitational wave patterns are perfect. The message is being encoded exactly as planned. Morrison opened a final channel to the Vectory homeworld. Zethkar, your message is being created. It's working perfectly, but there was no response. The Vectory homeworld was already being consumed by the expanding fires of their dying star. Zethkar and his people were gone, but their message was just beginning its journey across the galaxy. Captain, we need to retreat to a safe distance, Amanda said. The final collapse is about to begin. Morrison gave the order, and the UES Endeavour moved away from the dying star. Behind them, the Vectory sun began its final transformation into the greatest message ever sent. The Vectory star exploded in a way that no star had ever exploded before. Instead of a violent, chaotic blast, it was a controlled collapse that created perfect patterns of gravitational waves. Each wave carried part of the Vectory civilization's story as it raced across space at the speed of light. Captain Morrison watched from the bridge of the UES Endeavour as the star transformed into something incredible. The explosion created rings of energy that pulsed outward in precise patterns. To anyone who knew how to read gravitational waves, it would look like the star was singing. The message is transmitting perfectly, Dr. Thompson reported, his voice filled with awe. Every gravitational wave is carrying exactly the right information. The Vectory's entire civilization is encoded in those waves. Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring the communication systems. Captain, we're already receiving confirmation signals from our detection stations back home. The message is being received throughout human space. Morrison felt a mix of sadness and wonder. The Vectory homeworld was gone, consumed by the fires of their dying star. But their message was just beginning its million-year journey across the galaxy. What about the survivors? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Davis checked her sensors. The evacuation ships made it safely to the outer planets. 2 million Vectory are alive and well. They're sending us messages of gratitude over the following weeks. As the UES Endeavour began its journey back to Earth, the crew continued to monitor the Vectory message. The gravitational waves were spreading outward from the dead star, carrying their story to every corner of the galaxy, but something unexpected began to happen. Other civilizations were responding to the message. Captain, you need to see this, Dr. Rodriguez said one morning. She had been working in the communication lab when she discovered something amazing. Morrison joined her at the monitoring station. What is it? We're detecting new gravitational wave signals. They're coming from different star systems all across this part of the galaxy. I think other alien civilizations are receiving the Vectory message and responding to it. Morrison stared at the data on the screen. Are you saying there are other intelligent species out there? Not just other species, Captain. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. The Vectory message has created the first galaxy-wide communication network. Dr. Thompson joined them in the lab. This is incredible. Look at these signal patterns. Each one is different, suggesting different technologies and different ways of thinking. But they're all responding to the Vectory message. Over the next few months, as the UES Endeavour traveled back toward Earth, the crew worked to decode the new signals. It became clear that the galaxy was full of intelligent life, and the Vectory's final message had brought them all together for the first time. Some of the alien responses were simple acknowledgments, like saying, "We received your message," and "We will remember you." Others were more complex, sharing pieces of their own civilization's histories and cultures. It's like the Vectory started a galactic conversation, Dr. Rodriguez explained to Captain Morrison. Their message didn't just preserve their civilization. It connected every intelligent species in this part of the galaxy. When the UES Endeavour finally reached Earth, the crew was met by Admiral Hayes and a team of scientists who had been monitoring the expanding wave of messages from space. The Admiral looked older than when Morrison had last seen her, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Captain Morrison, what you and your crew accomplished out there has changed everything," she said. The Vectory message is being received by alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. We're not alone, and now everyone knows it. Dr. Lisa Chun, who had helped plan the original mission, was amazed by the results. The gravitational wave detectors on Earth are picking up new signals every day. We're learning about civilizations that are millions of years old and others that are just beginning to develop technology. President Brooks called a special meeting to discuss what had happened. Leaders from all over human space gathered to hear about the mission and plan for the future. The Vectory survivors have requested permission to settle in our solar system, Admiral Hayes reported. They want to work with us to decode and respond to the new messages we're receiving. The President approved the request immediately. After what they've been through and what they've given to the galaxy, they deserve a new home. The Vectory survivors were settled on New Harmony, a planet in the Tau Ceti system that had been prepared for human colonization. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded the aliens of their lost homeworld. Zethkar's assistant, a young Vectory scientist named Veltar, became the leader of the survivors. He worked closely with Dr. Rodriguez to establish a permanent communication center that could receive and decode messages from across the galaxy. The message my people created has done something we never expected, Veltar told Dr. Rodriguez during one of their meetings. It has not only preserved our civilization, but it has brought the galaxy together. 3 years after the mission, Dr. Rodriguez had become the director of the Institute for Galactic Communication. Her job was to coordinate humanity's participation in the growing network of alien civilizations that were now talking to each other. Every day brought new messages. Some were from ancient civilizations that had been traveling among the stars for millions of years. Others were from young species that had just discovered how to detect gravitational waves. All of them had been inspired by the Vectory's message to reach out and make contact with other forms of life. We're receiving poetry from a civilization near the center of the galaxy, Dr. Rodriguez reported to Admiral Hayes during one of their weekly meetings, and mathematical theorems from a species that lives on planets orbiting neutron stars. The variety of life out there is incredible. Admiral Hayes, now in her 70s, often stood in her garden on Mars and looked up at the night sky. She knew that somewhere out there, the Vectory message was still traveling, still carrying the story of a brave civilization to new corners of the galaxy. Do you think they knew? She asked Dr. Rodriguez one evening as they watched the sunset from the Admiral's garden. Do you think the Vectory knew that their message would do all this? Dr. Rodriguez thought about Zethkar and the other scientists who had stayed behind to make sure their message was perfect. I think they hoped it would, but I don't think they could have imagined how far it would spread. Captain Morrison, now leading the first diplomatic missions to nearby star systems, carried copies of the Vectory archives with him wherever he went. Every alien species he met wanted to learn about the civilization that had started the galactic conversation. The Vectory have become legends, he reported during one of his missions to a planet near Alpha Centauri. Every species we meet knows their story. They've become a symbol of what intelligent life can accomplish when it works together. The gravitational wave message continued its journey through space, reaching new star systems every year. As it traveled, it inspired more and more civilizations to join the galactic community. Scientists estimated that the message would eventually reach every intelligent species in the galaxy. The Vectory had achieved something that no civilization in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had not only preserved their own culture for eternity, but they had created the foundation for a galactic civilization that would last for millions of years on New Harmony. Veltar often visited the memorial that had been built to honor those who had died with their homeworld. The memorial was a simple crystal that resonated with gravitational waves, creating a soft humming sound that reminded the survivors of their lost home. They wanted to be remembered, Veltar said to visitors who came to see the memorial. But they did more than that. They made sure that no civilization would ever be alone again. The backup plan had worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The Vectory Sun had become not just a message, but the beginning of a new age in galactic history. And somewhere in space, their song continued to travel toward the stars, carrying with it the promise that intelligence and compassion could unite the galaxy.